This is Kai from WCC, and today we're going to take a look at the new Brandt deck that got released for Link Joker in Light of Salvation and Logic of Destruction booster set. And I'll go through the deck and talk to you about each of the cards that are in it, and then we'll talk about how it fares in the metagame today. Now, trigger lineup: 7 crit, 4 draw, 5 draw, 4 heal. You have to run the Lurley starter because you're running Geckos, which requires it. Grade 1s, you're running Jet Shaft, new grade 1, very excellent, forces intercepts. Geckos checks the opponent's top deck. When you place it onto the Guardian Circle and successfully guard, you may move it to the Regard Circle. Gain from before, pretty standard. We don't really use that effect. It's kind of there for filler, unless they have a grade 1 that you really want to get rid of. And Chirai, a top 4 search effect that can search for a grade 2 or higher Starhawk. Personally, I don't really use any of these effects much except for Jet Shaft. The Counterblast 1 can be used for other things, and their effects just aren't great. Like Geckos, sure, you can come back. That's probably the best effect out of these grade 1s apart from Jet Shaft. Gain, you kind of filter your hand, that's about it, but you normally don't play it that aggressively. And then Chirai is just not a confirmed top 4 check. You're paying 1 for the possibility of getting nothing. It's really there if you're lacking your Brandt grade 3 and you really need to dig it out. That's when you'd actually start playing it, but otherwise I wouldn't go for it. Geckos and Chirai, they're basically also there for the Starhawk name, because your Letter Luck will need Starhawks to gain power, so that's another reason why I put more here than anywhere else. Going to the grade 2s, we've got Gaily, Letter Luck, and Vect. So the theory behind this is that Gaily and Vect can both get us +1s, and we really need that in a deck that doesn't get any +1s at all. Gaily allows for you to push early. Vect is quite amazing. If you empty hit, as in don't hit the Vanguard, they still have to commit a trigger, or otherwise you retire and draw, which is great. Letter Luck is your main beater and also your main top deck checker in your opponent's turn. It can get fat. It can basically does everything the deck wants. Get fat, check opponent's top deck so they trigger and get a minus instead. And yeah, it does everything. That's basically the grade 2 slots. Everything else, pluses. And then with the grade 3s and 4s, we have your main grade 3 Brandt. You see I'm running Greyon. That's basically there for filler, because you don't really have anything else to play. But it's still nice. You have the option to delete, though I've never really used it at all because of the Counterblast 2 cost. And the other one's the on-hit Soul Blast 1, which is actually probably the most relevant effect for this card. If you have to ride this first, then at least you can bind one of your opponent's cards. And then your Brandt Ringer is your grade 4. You're not running 4 of them. I've tested 4 before, and I didn't really like it because it's not needed having those extra grade 4s unless you really want to re-ride your grade 4s repeatedly. But at that stage of the game, it's just taking up slots that you can probably use for just more guard. The other grade 3 considerations are the one that gives your opponent +1 drive. I did test that. It's nice that it gets fat and then you can beat down your opponent, but giving your opponents that extra drive is actually pretty damaging. They can get a +1 if it's not a trigger. If they trigger something like a draw or a front, that's actually a very low impact trigger for them to trigger. So they're just getting the 10k power, and that actually is pretty hard for you to guard, getting those extra 10ks. So in the end, I decided against playing that card. If you ride that card as well, it's absolutely terrible. The card is nice when your opponent's at 4 or 5 and you just want them to trigger a heal so they die, but apart from that, I don't find it that worth it. So how does the deck actually play? Well, you play against people who are lucky, and then suddenly they become unlucky because they'll trigger all their heals, they trigger all their crits. You find that guy that you absolutely hate who always double crits you, and you play this deck and they just feel awful. They can't double crit you. More seriously, if this deck will punish bad players, like most Link Joker decks. This deck will punish bad players or players who aren't really paying that much attention to the game. If you play against a good player, though, they'll kind of know how to play around Brandt, and that's where this deck kind of does not shine there. Some things you can take note of: if you have a Brandt, you can just no guard at 4 because your opponent cannot crit you. If you're at 5, same thing. You just hope they get a crit, and then instead of crit to win or something like that, it becomes crit to not win. If you're playing against Brandt, you don't want to go to 5 if you have heals in your deck, simply because you can't heal. You just die. Even going to like 4 is pretty dangerous because you can't heal. Your opponent can heal, you can't heal. Every damage you take after they ride a Brandt becomes, it just sticks. There is no way to get rid of it unless you're Angel Feather. The rest of the deck plays kind of boring, to be honest. Your Vect is nice, but that can pretty much go into the other Link Joker decks. You're trying to push damage early so the damage kind of sticks. After you ride a Brandt, your Brandt seals the damage, and then you're hoping they just get a bit unlucky and they trigger heal somewhere and their damage goes up. But after that, like when you ride your grade 3s, you don't really gain much power, and you also don't gain much advantage. And it's not like you're threatening your opponent. You're kind of just lame in a way. You're a very lame deck. You're hoping your opponent just gets unlucky. And against good players, they'll do their best to actually decompress their deck so they trigger as little as possible. So it doesn't work out that well, especially against big hitters like Kagero and Bermuda. Sure, Kagero restands, but they actually don't care. They get if they get a crit, that's just bad luck for them, but everything hits big, they retire stuff, there's nothing you can do. Then Bermuda just hits massive, you can't guard. Their mid column might not get to do any damage if they get a crit, but their other sides hit huge, and they have cards to actually decompress their deck as well. So against the big two of the format, this really isn't a great deck to pick. Against OTT as well, they can just uncheck their triggers. So not cool. Against everything else though, you'll probably have some fun. Your opponent might not have that much fun. But honestly speaking, I think deleters are probably just better than this deck in this format right now. The best card that Link Joker got in this set is Jet Shaft and Vect, and both of them can be used in a deleter deck. So why not just play deleters? Deleters are nice in a format where it's all about coin flipping, and when everyone else is playing Force and has no guarantee of getting protect markers or nulls, deleters can kind of just randomly steamroll a deck. They draw a half okay hand, and then suddenly they're restanding with a crit Vanguard and your opponent can't do anything about it. So overall, I think if you want to play Link Jokers, deleters is the way to go. If you want to play Brandt for fun, for sure, go for it. Other card, Jet Shaft, also a real nice card. Against something like Bermuda, can force their big intercepts on a bad column. So that's another nice gimmick. But yeah, overall this deck is all about gimmicks. You can't get you can't build like full Star Hulk. So you'd have times when you trigger non-Star Hulks and your letter luck just feels bad. And yeah, it's a bit of a mess at the moment. So overall, in my opinion, purely casual deck, purely for funsies against non-competitive decks. But when you start getting into competition, you're gonna start having issues. So touch more about the other EB06 decks in the next video, and I'll see you guys then. Bye.